My wife dropped her champagne glass that night. Not from shock at what I did, but from shock at what she had just said. But let me back up 30 seconds to when this whole mess started. We're standing in the grand ballroom of the Marriott downtown annual charity gala for her marketing firm. She's wearing this stunning black dress that probably cost more than most people's rent. And honestly, she looks incredible. 3 years of marriage, and she still turns heads when she walks into a room. I'm proud to be next to her, proud to be her husband. The evening's going well. We've made our rounds, chatted with her colleagues, smiled for the photographer they hired to capture all the beautiful people pretending to care about whatever cause they're throwing money at this year. Standard corporate event stuff, but she's in her element. This is her world, her people, her stage. That's when I made my mistake, or what I thought was a mistake at the time. I put my arm around her waist. Nothing dramatic, nothing possessive, just a simple, affectionate gesture between husband and wife. The kind of thing you see couples do at events like this every single day. Natural, normal, expected even. She shrugged away from me like I had just grabbed a hot stove. But worse than the physical rejection was what came out of her mouth next. Don't act married. It makes me look tied down. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Not because they were loud. She said them quietly, almost conversationally, but because of how casually cruel they were. How effortlessly she had just reduced our entire marriage to something embarrassing, something that cramped her style. I stood there for maybe 3 seconds, processing what had just happened around us. Conversations continued. People laughed at jokes I couldn't hear. The string quartet kept playing their elegant background music. But for me, everything had gone silent except for those 8 words echoing in my head. Don't act married. It makes me look tied down. That's when I made a decision that surprised even me. I reached down to my left hand and slowly twisted off my wedding ring. The same ring she had placed there 3 years ago while promising to love, honor, and cherish me. The same ring I had worn every single day since, through good times and bad, because it meant something to me. I held it up between my thumb and index finger, just high enough for her to see it clearly. Her eyes widened slightly, but she didn't say anything. Maybe she thought I was bluffing. Maybe she figured I'd put it back on after making my point. Instead, I dropped it into my champagne glass. The soft clink of gold hitting crystal wasn't loud, but somehow it seemed to echo through our immediate area. The tiny splash as it settled at the bottom of the glass was even quieter. But the effect was immediate. Her champagne flute slipped from her fingers and shattered against the marble floor. The sound was sharp and sudden, causing several nearby conversations to pause. People turned to look, and that's when they saw me holding my champagne glass with my wedding ring sitting at the bottom like some twisted garnish. Tied down problem, I said, meeting her shocked stare directly. Solved. The couple next to us, the firm's senior partners, had definitely noticed what just happened. The wife's mouth was slightly open, her eyes darting between my glass and my now bare left hand. Her husband was trying to pretend he hadn't seen anything, but his uncomfortable shifting gave him away. My wife opened her mouth to say something, then closed it again. For the first time since I'd known her, she seemed genuinely speechless. The confident, take-charge woman who commanded every room she entered was standing there, looking lost, surrounded by broken glass, and the growing awareness that her colleagues were starting to understand exactly what they had just witnessed. Should we? She finally managed, her voice barely above a whisper. Should we talk about this somewhere private? I took a sip from my champagne, careful not to disturb the ring at the bottom. No need. You got exactly what you wanted. Look around. Nobody here thinks you're tied down anymore. And they didn't. The whispers were already starting. Phones were discreetly coming out as people pretended to check messages while actually texting their friends about the drama unfolding at table 12. Within minutes, everyone at this gala would know that the successful marketing executive had just been publicly freed from the burden of appearing married. A waiter appeared with a dustpan and broom, efficiently cleaning up the shattered champagne flute while pretending not to notice the tension. Professional to the core, but I caught him glancing at my glass with obvious curiosity. She was frantically looking around now, realizing that her moment of casual cruelty had become the evening's entertainment. Her face had gone pale except for 2 bright spots of color on her cheeks. Whether from embarrassment or anger, I couldn't tell. Probably both. "This is ridiculous," she hissed, leaning closer to me. "Put your ring back on. People are staring. People are supposed to stare," I replied calmly. "That's what you wanted, right? To not look tied down. Well, congratulations. Mission accomplished." The string quartet had moved on to something slower and more dramatic, as if they were providing a soundtrack to our unfolding disaster. Around us, the gala continued, but we had definitely become the subplot that everyone would remember long after they forgot what charity they had supposedly been supporting. The news traveled faster than champagne bubbles rising to the surface. Within 10 minutes, I watched the story spread through the ballroom like wildfire. A discreet whisper here, a meaningful glance there, and suddenly half the room knew that the power couple from Henderson Marketing had just had a very public meltdown. The other half would catch up during dinner. She tried damage control first. "You're being dramatic," she said, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Just put it back on and we can laugh about this later." I swirled my champagne gently, watching my wedding ring spin at the bottom of the glass. "Laugh about what?" "You got exactly what you asked for. I'm not acting married anymore." That's when the senior partner's wife, Mrs. Henderson herself, decided to approach us. Perfect timing, really. She glided over with that practiced smile that wealthy women perfect after decades of navigating social minefields. "Everything all right over here?" I heard glass breaking. My wife jumped at the chance to explain. "Oh, just a little accident. You know how clumsy I get when I'm having too much fun." Mrs. Henderson's eyes immediately went to my left hand, then to the glass in my right hand, then back to my wife's face. The woman hadn't built a multi-million-dollar marketing firm by missing important details. "I see," she said slowly. "Well, accidents happen." She paused, letting the weight of that statement hang in the air. Though some are more permanent than others, the message was clear. Mrs. Henderson understood exactly what kind of accident this was, and she wasn't buying the clumsy routine for a second. After she walked away, my wife turned to me with panic starting to creep into her voice. "Do you realize what you've done? These are my colleagues, my clients. My career depends on these relationships. Your career depends on your work, not on whether people think you're happily married," I replied. "Besides, you just told me that looking tied down was bad for your image. I fixed that problem for you." She stared at me like I had grown a second head. "That's not what I meant, and you know it." "Actually, that's exactly what you meant. You meant that being seen as married to me was somehow limiting you. Well, now you don't have to worry about that anymore." The dinner bell chimed, and we were directed to our assigned table. Table 12, right in the middle of the ballroom, where everyone could get a clear view of the couple who had provided the evening's entertainment. Sitting down was interesting. She kept glancing around nervously while I acted like nothing had happened. The couple across from us, both lawyers from what I gathered, were trying to make polite conversation. But their eyes kept drifting to my bare ring finger and then to my champagne glass, which I had brought with me to the table. "So," the male lawyer ventured, "how long have you two been together?" My wife opened her mouth to answer, but I beat her to it. "Well, we were married for 3 years, but apparently that was making her look tied down. So we're working on fixing that situation." The awkward silence that followed was beautiful. The lawyer's wife nearly choked on her salad, and her husband suddenly became very interested in the dinner menu. My wife kicked me under the table hard. I didn't react. The woman next to me, some executive from a competing firm, decided to break the tension. "The salmon looks delicious tonight." "It does," I agreed. "Almost as good as the champagne, though it has an interesting aftertaste." I took another sip, making sure everyone could see the rings still sitting at the bottom. That's when my wife finally cracked. "Stop it!" she hissed under her breath. "Just stop it right now." "Stop what? I'm being perfectly polite. I'm making conversation. I'm not acting married, just like you wanted." The executive next to me excused herself to use the restroom, but I could tell she was really going to call someone and share this story. Within an hour, people who weren't even at this gala would know what happened. During the main course, my wife tried a different approach. She leaned close and put her hand on my arm, speaking in what she probably thought was a seductive whisper. "Baby, you know I didn't mean it like that. I was just nervous about the presentation tomorrow, and I said something stupid. You know how much I love you." I looked down at her hand on my arm, then back at her face. "If you love me so much, why does being married to me make you feel tied down?" She didn't have an answer for that. She removed her hand and went back to pushing food around on her plate. The keynote speaker was some motivational guy talking about the importance of commitment and follow-through in business relationships. The irony wasn't lost on anyone at our table. Every time he said the word commitment, someone would glance our way. By dessert, the whole dynamic had shifted. People weren't just sneaking looks at us anymore. They were having full conversations about relationships and marriage, clearly aimed at our situation. The lawyer's wife started talking about how important it was for couples to support each other in public, even when they disagreed in private. My wife was squirming in her chair. She had gone from confident socialite to the evening's cautionary tale in less than 2 hours. When the dancing started, she expected me to ask her to dance. Instead, I asked Mrs. Henderson. The older woman accepted with an amused smile, and as we moved to the dance floor, she leaned in close. "You know, in 40 years of marriage, my husband has never once made me feel like being his wife was a burden." "That must be nice," I replied. "It is," she said. "It really is." When the song ended and I returned to the table, my wife was sitting alone. Everyone else had moved to the bar or the dance floor, leaving her isolated with her thoughts and the growing realization that her casual cruelty had consequences she hadn't anticipated. The car ride home was a masterclass in controlled tension. She waited until we were on the highway before she exploded. "What the hell was that back there? Do you have any idea how humiliated I feel right now?" I kept my eyes on the road, hands steady on the wheel. "You feel humiliated? Interesting. How do you think I felt when my own wife told me that being married to me made her look tied down? That's completely different, and you know it. Is it? Explain the difference to me." She fumbled for words, gesturing wildly with her hands. It was just, you know what I meant? Actually, I don't. That's why I'm asking you to explain it." The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. Finally, she tried a different approach. "Look, I'm sorry." "Okay, I said something stupid. But did you have to make such a scene? Did you have to embarrass me in front of everyone I work with? I didn't make a scene. I simply gave you exactly what you asked for. You wanted to not look tied down, so I untied you by dropping your wedding ring in a glass of champagne. That's not normal behavior. I glanced at her for the first time since we got in the car. And telling your husband not to act married because it makes you look tied down is normal behavior. She had no answer for that. The next morning, she tried to pretend nothing had happened. Came down to the kitchen in her usual power suit. Heels clicking on the tile floor, acting like we were still the same couple we'd been yesterday. "Good morning," she said brightly, kissing the air next to my cheek. I was reading the news on my tablet, coffee in hand. "Morning. What do you want for dinner tonight?" I was thinking about that new Italian place. I looked up at her. Why would we go to dinner together? The question caught her off guard. Because we always go out on Fridays. We used to go out on Fridays when we were acting married. But you made it clear that you don't want to look tied down. So I figure you'd prefer to make your own dinner plans. Her bright morning facade cracked slightly. Don't be ridiculous. Of course, we're still going to have dinner together. Are we? Because I don't want to make you look tied down by expecting you to spend time with your husband. She slammed her coffee mug down on the counter. Stop saying that. You're twisting everything around. I'm not twisting anything. I'm just respecting your clearly stated preferences. For the next week, I maintained that same energy. Polite but distant, helpful but not invested. I treated her like a reasonably pleasant roommate who happened to share my living space. When she asked me to pick up her dry cleaning, I suggested she handle her own errands since she was a strong, independent woman who didn't want to appear tied down. When she expected me to attend her company's happy hour, I reminded her that showing up with a husband might give people the wrong impression about her availability. She oscillated between fury and manipulation. First, she'd get angry and demand that I stop being childish. When that didn't work, she'd try to seduce me, wearing the lingerie she knew I liked and speaking in that sultry voice that used to drive me crazy. "Come on, baby," she purred one evening, running her fingers down my chest. "Let's go upstairs, and I'll remind you why you married me." I gently removed her hands from my shirt. I remember exactly why I married you. The question is whether you remember why you married me, or if having a husband just makes you feel too tied down for your taste. She actually screamed that time. Full-on frustrated scream like a toddler having a meltdown. I can't take this anymore. You're punishing me for one stupid comment. I'm not punishing you. I'm giving you the freedom you wanted. You should be thanking me. This isn't what I wanted. Then you should have thought more carefully before you said it. By the second week, she was trying guilt trips. My mother called asking why you didn't say hello when she called yesterday. What am I supposed to tell her? Tell her that you don't want people to think you're tied down? So you're handling your own family relationships now. She's going to think we're getting divorced. I looked up from my book. Are we? The question hung in the air like smoke. She stared at me, searching my face for some sign that I was bluffing, that this was all an elaborate game to teach her a lesson. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. You made it clear that being married to me is a problem for you. I'm simply exploring solutions to that problem. Her face went pale. I never said being married to you was a problem. You said acting married made you look tied down. Same thing. No, it's not the same thing at all. Enlighten me. What's the difference between being married and acting married? She opened and closed her mouth several times. But no words came out because there was no difference, and we both knew it. That night, she tried a different strategy. She cooked my favorite meal, opened a bottle of wine, lit candles around the dining room, the whole romantic dinner set up. "I thought we could talk," she said, as I sat down at the perfectly set table. "Sure. What do you want to talk about?" "Us, our marriage, how we fix this." I cut into the steak she'd prepared. It was perfectly cooked, just the way I liked it. "What makes you think there's something to fix?" "Don't do this. Don't pretend like everything is fine when you're clearly angry with me. I'm not angry. Angry would imply that I'm emotionally invested in changing your behavior. I'm not. I'm simply adapting to the new parameters you've established for our relationship." She set down her fork and leaned forward. "What parameters?" "That being seen as married to me is a burden to you. That acting like we're a couple makes you look tied down. I've accepted that, and I'm adjusting accordingly. But I don't want you to adjust. I want things to go back to normal. Normal was you being embarrassed by your marriage. Normal was you shrugging away from my affection in public because it cramped your style. If that's what you call normal, then I prefer this new arrangement." The candle at dinner ended with her crying into her wine glass while I calmly finished my meal. Just like the gala, just like every conversation we'd had since. She was learning that actions have consequences, and some words can't be taken back once they're spoken. 3 weeks in, she realized I wasn't bluffing when the bank statement arrived. I had quietly opened my own checking account and redirected my paycheck. When she confronted me about it, waving the statement in my face like evidence of a crime, I was sitting at the kitchen table reading the sports section. "What is this?" she demanded. I glanced at the paper in her hand. "Looks like a bank statement. You opened your own account without telling me." "Why would I need to tell you? You're not tied down to me, remember? That means you handle your finances and I handle mine." She stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language. "That's not how marriage works. According to you, we're not acting married anymore. Married couples share finances. Independent people handle their own money. You wanted independence. I never said I wanted to be financially independent from you. You said you didn't want to look tied down. Shared bank accounts are pretty much the definition of being tied down to someone." She threw the statement on the table and started pacing. "This is insane. You're being completely unreasonable. I'm being logical. You established that you don't want the constraints of appearing married. I'm removing those constraints systematically. That weekend, when her sister came to visit, the full scope of our new arrangement became clear to everyone. Her sister noticed immediately that I wasn't wearing my wedding ring. She also noticed that when she asked us about our weekend plans, we each had completely separate activities scheduled. "Are you guys okay?" she asked during lunch. "You seem different." My wife jumped in quickly. "We're fine. Everything's great, right, honey?" I looked up from my sandwich. "We're adapting. Your sister decided she didn't want to look tied down by being married. So we're exploring what that looks like in practice." The sister's eyebrows shot up. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means," I explained calmly, "that she's free to make her own plans, handle her own responsibilities, and live her life without the burden of having to consider a husband's feelings or opinions." My wife kicked me under the table again, but I was getting used to that. Her sister looked back and forth between us. "That sounds like your roommates, not married." "Exactly," I agreed. "Much better for someone who doesn't want to appear tied down." After her sister left, my wife was furious. "Why did you have to make it sound like we're getting divorced? Are we not? Because if we're staying married, then we need to act married. But you made it clear that acting married was a problem for you. Stop saying that. I never said acting married was a problem. I pulled out my phone and played the voice memo I'd recorded right after the gala, while everything was still fresh in my memory. My own voice filled the kitchen. She said, and I quote, "Don't act married. It makes me look tied down." She went completely silent. She had forgotten that I had a habit of recording important conversations for work, and apparently our marriage imploding qualified as important enough to document. "You recorded me?" I recorded my recollection of what happened? Yes. For clarity, she listened to the memo 3 more times, her face getting paler each time, because hearing it played back made it impossible to deny what she'd actually said or how casually cruel it had sounded. I was stressed about work. I didn't mean it the way it sounded. How did you mean it? I don't know. I wasn't thinking clearly. So, when you're stressed, your instinct is to humiliate your husband in public. She had no answer for that. The next week, her friend called while I was in the room. She put it on speaker, assuming I participate in the conversation like I used to. "Hey girl, how are you and your husband doing? My sister said she saw you at Whole Foods last weekend, and you looked amazing." My wife glanced at me nervously. We're good. That's great. You guys are such relationship goals. I keep telling my boyfriend that's what I want. A man who's proud to be seen with me everywhere. The irony was thick enough to cut with a knife. I got up and left the room, but not before I heard my wife stumble through some awkward explanation about why we hadn't been seen together much lately. When the call ended, she found me in the home office working on my laptop. She's right. You know, we used to be good together. I didn't look up from my screen. We were past tense. We could be again, could we? Because I haven't seen any evidence that you've changed your mind about being tied down. She sat down across from me. What would it take to fix this? You can't fix this. Why not? I finally looked at her. Because the problem isn't what you said. The problem is that you thought it. The problem is that being married to me, being seen as my wife, felt like a burden to you. You can apologize for saying it out loud, but you can't apologize for feeling it. And you definitely can't convince me that you don't still feel that way. Her eyes filled with tears. That's not fair. Fair. You humiliated me in front of your colleagues because acknowledging me as your husband cramped your style. But I'm the one being unfair. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I'm sorry. I'm really truly sorry. I know you are. You're sorry you said it. You're sorry I heard it. You're sorry there were consequences. But are you sorry you felt it? Are you sorry that being married to me made you feel tied down? The long pause before she answered told me everything I needed to know. I don't know, she whispered. At least you're being honest now. That night, she slept in the guest room. Not because I kicked her out, but because she couldn't stand the polite distance I maintained, even in our own bedroom. The man who used to hold her close and whisper sweet things in her ear now said good night like she was a hotel guest. Her world was unraveling, and for the first time since the gala, I felt something that wasn't cold indifference. I felt satisfied. She was finally understanding what it meant to be on the receiving end of emotional detachment. For weeks after the gala, she finally broke completely. I came home from work to find her sitting at the kitchen table with a bottle of wine half empty and tears streaming down her face. She looked up when I walked in, and for the first time since this whole thing started, she looked genuinely vulnerable. I can't do this anymore, she said, her voice cracking. This isn't living. This is just existing in the same house like strangers. I set down my briefcase and loosened my tie. You're the one who wanted us to stop acting married. I was wrong, she shouted, slamming her wine glass down so hard I thought it might shatter. I was wrong. Okay, I said something horrible and stupid, and I've regretted it every single day since. Have you? She looked at me through her tears. What do you mean? Have you regretted it every day? Or have you just regretted the consequences? She wiped her nose with a tissue. Both. I regret saying it, and I regret what it's done to us. I sat down across from her at the table where we used to eat breakfast together, where we used to plan our weekends, where we used to be a couple instead of two people sharing space. Tell me why you said it. I don't know why I said it. Yes, you do. People don't just randomly say things like that. There was a reason. What was it? She stared into her wine glass for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I felt suffocated. There it was. The truth. I'd been waiting for her to admit. Suffocated by what? By being seen as half of a couple all the time. By everyone always asking about us together. Never just about me. By feeling like I was losing myself and being your wife. I leaned back in my chair. So when you said acting married made you look tied down, you meant it. I meant it in that moment. Yes. But I was wrong. Were you? Or are you just saying that because you don't like the alternative? She reached across the table and grabbed my hand. It was the first time she'd touched me in weeks. And I didn't pull away, but I didn't squeeze back either. I love you. I love being married to you. I was scared of disappearing into the relationship. So, you decided to make me disappear instead. Her grip tightened on my hand. That's not what I wanted. It's what you did. You erased me from your public life because acknowledging me felt like a limitation. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I looked down at our joined hands. Hers was trembling slightly. Sorry, it doesn't fix this. Then what does? Tell me what to do, and I'll do it. Nothing. There's nothing you can do. She pulled her hand back like I'd burned her. What do you mean, nothing? I mean that some things can't be fixed. Some words can't be taken back. Some trust can't be rebuilt. That's not true. People work through problems all the time. We can go to counseling. We can. You humiliated me in public because being my wife felt like a burden to you. Do you understand that? Do you understand what that did to me? Her face crumpled. I know. I know I hurt you. You didn't just hurt me. You showed me who you really are. You showed me what you really think of our marriage. And now you want me to pretend I didn't see it. I want you to forgive me. I do forgive you. Hope flickered in her eyes. You do? I forgive you for being honest about your feelings. I forgive you for showing me the truth about what our marriage meant to you. I even forgive you for thinking that saying you're sorry would be enough to make me forget. The hope died as quickly as it had appeared. But you won't take me back. There's nothing to take back. You're still here. You're still my wife on paper. But the marriage you're sorry for losing that died the moment you told me not to act married. She started crying again, harder this time. Please don't do this. Please don't throw away 3 years over one stupid comment. I'm not throwing away 3 years. I'm acknowledging that the 3 years weren't what I thought they were. You've taught me that what I saw as a loving marriage, you saw as a cage. That's not true anymore, isn't it? If we went to another company event tomorrow, would you be proud to have me put my arm around you? Or would some part of you still worry about looking tied down? She opened her mouth to answer, then closed it, then opened it again. The pause was all the answer I needed. "You can't even lie convincingly about it," I said quietly. "I would be proud," she finally said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Would you? Or would you be afraid that people might think less of you for being attached to someone?" Another pause, another non-answer. "This is why we can't fix this. Because the problem isn't what you said. The problem is what you believe, and you still believe it, even if you wish you didn't." She sobbed into her hands. "So what happens now? We just live like this forever." "No, we don't live like this forever." She looked up. Mascara streaked down her cheeks. "What does that mean?" "It means I've made a decision about our future." "What kind of decision?" I got up from the table and walked to the home office. When I came back, I was carrying a manila folder. I set it down in front of her. "What is this?" she asked, though I think she already knew. "Divorce papers. I had them drawn up last week." Her face went completely white. "You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. I'm done pretending this marriage is something it's not." But I said I was sorry. I said I wanted to fix things. And I explained why that's not possible. "You can't unsay what you said. You can't unfill what you felt. And I can't unknow what I know about how you really see me." She pushed the folder away from her like it was toxic. "I won't sign them." "You don't have to. I can file for irreconcilable differences with or without your cooperation. But it would be easier for both of us if you did." "This is insane. You're destroying our marriage over one moment of stupidity." "I'm not destroying our marriage. Our marriage was destroyed the moment you decided that being seen with your husband was embarrassing. I'm just making it official." She stood up so fast, her chair fell backwards. "I won't let you do this. I'll fight it. I'll make you remember why you married me." I looked at her calmly. "Why did I marry you?" "Because you love me. I did love you. But love isn't enough when the person you love is ashamed of being loved by you." She had no response to that because deep down, she knew I was right. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized on a Tuesday morning in Judge Martinez's courtroom. She showed up with her lawyer, still hoping for some last-minute miracle. I showed up with mine, ready to close this chapter of my life permanently. The proceedings took exactly 47 minutes. When the judge asked if there was any possibility of reconciliation, her lawyer started to speak, but she stopped him with a raised hand. "No, Your Honor," she said quietly. "There isn't." She had finally accepted what I'd been telling her for months. Some damage can't be undone. Walking out of that courthouse, I felt lighter than I had in years. Not because I was happy the marriage was over, but because I was finally free from the weight of being with someone who saw my love as a limitation. 3 months after that, ran into Mrs. Henderson at a coffee shop downtown. She recognized me immediately and invited me to join her at her table. "How are you doing?" she asked, stirring cream into her latte. "Better than expected," I told her honestly. "Good. You know that night at the Gala when you dropped that ring in your champagne glass? I've never seen anything quite like it. It felt like the right thing to do at the time." She smiled. It was the right thing to do. A man should never have to apologize for expecting his wife to be proud of him. 6 months after the divorce was final, I started dating again. Not seriously at first, just casual dinners and weekend activities. But eventually, I met someone who didn't see being with me as a burden to bear. The first I thought maybe that's what she needed all along. Someone who was content to be her secret instead of her partner. As for me, I learned something valuable from that whole experience. I learned that you can't love someone into loving you back the way you deserve to be loved. You can't compromise yourself into being acceptable to someone who fundamentally doesn't accept you. Sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is exactly what I did that night at the gala. Sometimes I've selected 2 other videos for you that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I'll be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.